Julian Benzavalli.
Hello, Patrick Hines.
Oh my goodness, today is the day. Tell them who we are about to talk to.
We met and got to interview Dr. Ann Burgess. I cried at her.
I know.
I teared up, but come on.
You did great.
Thank you.
Was a beautiful, beautiful interview. You know, we all know Dr. Burgess worked with the FBI on criminal profiling. She was the one that, because of her work with rape survivors, she was asked to come in to help the FBI understand profiling and understanding the psyche and sort of getting into the minds of people. And her story was partially told in that Netflix show, Mindhunter.
Yes, and we covered Mastermind. That was the documentary we covered, I think, 3 episodes. And she was the one who was like, hi, we have to care about victims and listen to them and hear their stories. So she was the one, talk about victim focus. That's her entire life's work.
And she's worked on so many famous cases. In this interview, we really go in on the Menendez case because she was the one that really helped the court understand that Eric and Lyle had been sexually abused. And it was through her interview with Eric that happened. But we also would talk about her early life when she started delivering babies at 11 years old. Don't even get me started.
I know. She's a hero. She's a living legend.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Her new book, Expert Witness, The Weight of Our Testimony When Justice Hangs in the Balance, comes out September 2nd. We talk a lot about the pressure of being an expert witness. I was fascinated to learn more about that.
Yeah, I just feel like she's lived a million lives, and I'm so happy that we were able to hear about it from her. She's just I'm still starstruck by it. I love her.
Me too. All right, fam, check out this interview, and we'll say quick goodbye on the way out. Well, first of all, congratulations on the new book. So the new book is called Expert Witness, The Weight of Our Testimony When Justice Hangs in the Balance. And so the first question is, what inspired you to write the book? And what about the book do you think is the most important thing for people to take away?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we decided Stephen Constantine, who was my co-writer, wanted to follow up on the cases that we had done in the first book, which is A Killer by Design, because a lot of times you end a case and you never hear anything more about it unless the person dies or something like that. So I thought it would be a good thing to follow up. So that's one of the things that we do in the book, is to follow up on everyone that we had written about. And so the second reason, of course, is we did add a few cases. And that is because one case may lead to another case. And so it's a pattern that we look at. For example, the type of victim that may be murdered, or the location, and just as an example, Richard Speck killed 8 nursing students. And look at Brian Kohlberger, just confessed to 4 co-eds and a young man. So there's a pattern there. And would it be interesting to look at those patterns? So you're always looking for kind of a new way to look at cases.
Can I ask, speaking specifically about Brian Kohlberger, when you hear about a case like that, just based on who you are and what you do you feel like I'd really like to get in the room with that person and sort of get to understand them on a level that can maybe bring something to the case?
Well, sometimes. I think that sometimes we do that. And certainly there was enough intrigue, if you want to call it that, around Brian Kohlberger. But what was interesting for me from the victim standpoint is we had an opportunity as a team out of the Cold Case Foundation to work with one of the family in writing their impact statement. And that was very, very revealing in terms of the impact that such a case has on a family. And specifically in that case, if you remember, 2 of the families did not want to plead guilty, that had really wanted to go to trial.
Yeah, which I understand. We lose a lot of understanding his perspective by foregoing a trial in favor of a guilty plea.
Right. So I think that people need to know that not everybody thinks that it's easy. Well, it is easy to go with a guilty plea because it ends the case, so to speak. Sometimes, not always. They think it ends it, but look at the Menendez case. That's one we write about because they were sure that would end that, no possibility of parole. And yet here we are.
I wanted to say, you're so analytical, but you also see the human element of the situation. So your work is methodical, but you're so empathetic with, really focusing on the victims and their experience. How do you balance all of that?
Well, you try to get both. That's why I have always, even on the offender has a family. What is it like for them? It's a very different impact, if you will, than certainly on the victim's family. So that's always intrigued me and that I try to write from that. And that Koberger case actually gave us that opportunity to do that, to really talk with, or not to talk with, I don't think anybody has talked with Koberger's family, but there's been a little bit of public information that has been available.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the Menendez case. I think that's one that our listeners will know really well. And there's a quote from your book that speaks to the experience of being an expert witness. And if you don't mind, I wanted to read you the quote, and then I have a couple of questions about it. So the quote is, "From day one, my goal as an expert witness in the Menendez brothers case was to explain to the jury how years of fear, trauma, and abuse could have culminated in murder. I wasn't trying to justify Lyle or Eric's actions or portray them as sympathetic figures, nor was I trying to vilify their parents. I was simply trying to show the boys' actions, as illogical as they might seem to an outsider, made sense from a neurological perspective." Now, we should say you were an expert witness in the first case that resulted in the hung jury. But that really got me thinking about the role of an expert witness. And I think in one of the documentaries that you were in that we covered, you talked a little bit about this too. My question is, do you worry about what can go wrong with your testimony? When you're getting ready to testify, it sounds like you're not going in with an agenda, but I'm curious if there are nerves on your end that you're going to say something wrong or be tricked by the attorney, or, sort of the process of going into getting your findings across appropriately.
I'd say yes to all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right on. It isn't easy. The direct is easy. Well, not easy, but I mean, you know what's coming. So you pretty much you're prepped, as they call it, for the direct, but you're not for the cross exam, and that's where the anxiety comes in. Of what are they going to find? Is there something that I missed? Is there, are they going to trick me? Absolutely, it's their job to trick me. It's their job to discredit me. That's why a lot of people don't like to do any kind of expert witness work, because of the discrediting. And sometimes it works. I've seen cases that have really gone badly, if you will, for an expert. So all of that you have to be prepared for. And I always say I wear my virtual bulletproof vest when I go in with the defense attorney or the prosecutor, whichever side, because I do both sides. I like to do that.
So how do you navigate that?
Carefully.
Right.
Carefully. You always have kind of little sayings that you can you try to buy some time, because you've got to put your thought process together. Or sometimes you just answer honestly. In the Menendez case, that's where the prosecutor had said, "Do you know what is psychobabble?" And luckily she asked it that way, because I wasn't expecting that. And I'm not sure if there was any special definition of psychobabble. And so I just said, no, I didn't. And that ended that, of course. But I was prepared for her when she tried to say, "Well, you're just an advocate for victims," or something like that. I forget the exact way she worded it. And I said, "No, I'm an advocate for science, nursing science." So that I that was when I felt I had prepared for, but not some of the others.
I have so many questions here because, number one of the breakthroughs in the case came from your conversations with Eric and the special technique that you used that sort of got him to reveal the abuse. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it seems to me like you were the first person to understand that there had been abuse there and that might be cause for them doing what they did. Is that right?
That's right. I know, just hearing about the case, I hadn't heard about it until I got a call, of course. So then I had to scurry and read up on it. But I remember thinking, these kids, and they were at that time, they were young, 18 and 21, and they had all the money. And I knew that the prosecution was going for greed and money, etc. And I thought, well, they have all the money, that they need more. They just asked daddy. That was known. So why would they need money at this point? The other big thing is they were getting ready to go to college. Most kids are really excited about that and getting much into that, not paying much attention to what's going on at home. So I said, something isn't adding up here. And that's where, because I've done so much work in the abuse area, I thought it possibly could be that. So I think I went in thinking that is something I'm certainly going to try to explore.
Another thing about that case that is so jarring, especially in Mastermind, the documentary that we covered, the media coverage of that case and the way the Menendez brothers were shown SNL, all of the late night shows. And it got me thinking, it was really horrifying to make fun of them crying on the stand for what happened to them. And it made me think of the media response to the rape case of Connie Francis in 1976. So how did that coincide with the work you were doing at that time in the 70s?
Well, we've actually just written, I've got a co-author on this, and we're talking about attitudes over 35 years. And we've kind of broken it down into 3 or 4 major areas. And you're absolutely right. This was the mindset, if you will, at that time. And the brothers did take a lot of discrediting and me also. But where I found some good points was in the jury in the first case, that Hazel Thornton, if you haven't interviewed her, she was magnificent she wrote a book because she kept a diary.
Oh,
And she
wow.
said, yeah, she kept a diary, and that's what got published. And she said that it was so clear from the first time they took a vote. Evidently, when you go in the jury room, they take a quick vote, but you have to do it visually. You have to put your hand up. And she said that was really wrong because it very clearly showed the women on one side and the men on another. And
Right.
she said it didn't change over time. It just didn't change. So she always wondered if maybe you had done a secret ballot or something that you might have been able to get some of the men to switch. And in fact, I think it was in Lyle's jury, they had 2 of the alternates they knew were going to vote for not acquittal, but for manslaughter. I think that was their choice.
Right.
Nobody denied that they did it. I mean, I think
Right.
that's
Exactly.
important. So if they did it and it was for greed, why didn't they just plead guilty? And they probably would have gotten a much lighter sentence, if you will. But that they wanted to go to trial was very important as you said, the question you asked is what could possibly have been so different for them? And actually, the method I use drawings,
Yeah.
and we're actually going to publish one of the drawings in an article on this where we're looking at the attitudes over time and how they've changed, and just to show the amount of emotion that came through in those drawings.
I wanted to ask you, did you testify in that trial before or after Lyle and Eric did?
Before,
Before. Okay, that's
I think.
interesting. Well, and I asked that only because I was old enough to have watched the trial when it was happening, and I remember watching the testimony that they both gave now as an adult. It is undeniable that they are telling the truth. It's just you cannot force that kind of emotion. And so I was thinking about you as an expert witness talking about you're there on the side of science. You're not there for the defense. You're not there for the prosecution. You're there for the side of science. But you're also a human being. You obviously have been a nurse for your whole career, so you're clearly a very compassionate human being. And I wonder, Dr. Burgess, if I may, do you really not have a bias? Do you really, is it really possible as a human, knowing what those boys suffered, having had such an intimate conversation with Eric, to not try to convey, like, this abuse is real, like, this really happened, and really can answer why they did what they did?
Oh, I think yes. That I even think AI has a bias. If you want to get on
Yes.
into that, that it's so hard to have something not have a bias. So when you do, of course, I was looking for any example to justify that, and I would do that in the interviews, and especially the family members, and especially teachers that got interviewed or friends or something. So yes, now, I think you try to fight against it so that you can be as unbiased as possible. But I think that and when you pick a side, whether you're defense or prosecution, that plays into it also.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to go back a little bit to your history, if we may. I learned some really interesting things about you that I thought were just so wild. So, for example, you had 3 uncles who were doctors. And when you were starting at 11 years old, you were helping your Uncle Frank deliver babies.
Yes.
I have an 11-year-old. I cannot imagine her doing that. So would you share a little bit of that experience and what that was like and how that informed what you wanted to do with your life?
Well, I remember one example where we go in, and you've got to remember this was rural Maryland. People were very poor. He would sometimes just get paid with a barrel of apples, on the back porch, you'd find it. So you've got to have the setting there. But we went in this one time, and there was also I think a football game on or something. And so he wanted to watch the end of the game. So he tells me to go into the room where the woman is, in labor, obviously.
What?
And he looks in and he says, "Oh, I need that curtain raised up so I can see what I'm doing, Penny." And so he made me, I had to get on the bed. That was the only way I could get over to the window to raise the curtain so he could see what he was doing. So I
And you
think he
delivered the
did that.
baby.
Yes, she had a baby. And I think he did that just because he wanted to see the end of the game and thought that was he was sure I would certainly tell him if I saw anything important going on with the woman. But I remember that so vividly that I had to climb over this poor woman to raise the curtain so he could see what he was going to do.
Well, I hope the game at least went in his favor after all of
Exactly.
this.
I'm sure it was some Maryland team playing, yes.
Oh,
I just wanted to mention your daughter because Dr. Elizabeth, is it Dowdell? Dowdell?
Yes.
Dowdell. You are both fellows in the American Academy of Nursing. You are the first mother-daughter members in that academy,
Yes.
which is fantastic. Can you talk? 'Cause your daughter's also doing amazing work. Obviously, it's genetic. It runs in the genes. You are just all amazing women. Can you talk about your relationship with your daughter in this way?
Oh, well, that was a really very, very proud moment too, that she was accepted. And she had to be named by three experts in the field and et cetera. And so we really prepared well for that when she got that. And I think I was able to be there. Well, I was there, obviously, but to give her one of the honors, it was just very special. She never liked psych. That was the fun part but she would always say, "Well, now I'll put my psych hat on that I learned from my mother," kind of thing. But she really liked working with children, and she's been what we call a pediatric nurse practitioner. And she actually got the research award for the whole school of Villanova a couple of years ago.
Wow.
So she really has followed I'm proud to say, in my footsteps in terms of the career, and
Yeah.
has done very well at Villanova.
And she's doing such amazing work with online predators, and that is
Yes.
so important. And we just covered a documentary about that, and it's just, it's so needed. So I just loved hearing about
Right.
that
She
dynamic.
she did the paper that she got the most credit for was sleeping with your iPhone, that the students would be asleep, they'd get a message, they'd have to answer it back and wake up the next day and not remember it. So she alerted them to be really careful with your iPhone. You may be saying things that you don't realize. And so everybody loved that. And I think she even did a little video podcast or something on it.
Wow.
ah.
You
I
never
wanted-
know what people are going to pick up.
It's true.
If you will.
Truly.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about Mindhunter. We must talk a little bit about Mindhunter if you don't mind. So of course, you're the inspiration for the character Dr. Nancy Carr on Mindhunter. And you had said that because they made her a psychologist, you considered that a missed opportunity because of course you're a nurse and that's what you brought to your work on the team. So can you explain a little bit what you mean? I think I know, but what you mean by it having been a missed opportunity to make the character a psychologist?
Well, that they did that was I really resented that because people don't understand nursing, that we have various levels of nursing. And the one that I play is more in what's now known as a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
In other words, nurse practitioners are well understood now, but back then I guess they weren't, and that they thought it would give the show more status, if you will, to have the role played by a psychologist, which I certainly did not. I really wanted the nurse piece, and I try to emphasize that, so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say it really plays into your interest in human behavior, which is another hallmark of your career and why you went into what you did. And the idea that you were trained as a nurse, but just as a human being with an interest in human behavior, that was sort of what you brought to the work. And so can you talk a little bit about that, having not been trained in psychology, how it was that you were able to win the trust of these people that you were studying?
Well, I feel that your education at the graduate level has a lot to do with whatever you do as a career. And I did when I was in Boston, they were very analytic. They were very Freudian. I don't even think they use the word anymore. But and I always remember John Douglas saying to me, "We've got to look at behavior. For me to have to go out and find somebody who's got an Oedipus complex would be very hard." So, we
Yeah.
looked at that from that standpoint. So I had that background. I had to do minor, if you will, in that psychoanalytic, and I use that a lot because in serial killers, why do they pick the same type of victim? And all of that usually goes back to some early experience. And then when I went to Maryland, University of Maryland, and they were very interpersonal, they had Sullivan was their kind of guru at that time. So I really had a nice balance, if you will, between the psychoanalytic and then the interpersonal. And I think that had something to do with why I liked psych nursing, if you will, as a main line of work.
It's so fascinating that you can use those tools on both sides of it, right? Like talking to the
Yeah.
perpetrators and the victims. It's
Yeah.
so fascinating to me.
Well, we had to do that because in treating them, we weren't getting the results we wanted by just using what we thought was the right thing. And I said, we've got to find out more about the offender because that's what has injured the victim.
Mhm.
Yes.
And then to be able to explain that to the victim, because so many victims would say, why did he pick me? Why did this happen? I was just in my bed sleeping. That kind of thing was really very, very frightening of the ways that they were being. So that's why I think that was important.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your instincts, because it feels like that plays a major part here, right?
Yeah.
Nobody taught you how to have a conversation with a serial killer. How did you just know, or even a victim, like a rape victim? How did you just know how to do that?
Well, I had the victim's story.
Yeah.
And so I knew what her story was. So I wanted to see what their story was or his story, because usually going to be a male. And that's where we started, learning that so many times the offender would say, well, she wanted it or she liked it and they would have asked the question. Don't forget, one type of offender really talks a lot and asks a lot of questions. So if he's saying, do you enjoy it? She's certainly going to usually say yes. And so he can justify to say, well, that's really what is going on, kind of thing. So you need that perspective, I think, to be able to catch the offender in his his misunderstanding, I guess we should say. And that gave people that treated offenders something to work with. That's what they go with, the misunderstandings, and correct it's called cognitive dissonance, I think, in the treatment.
So just in wrapping up, you're still teaching, is that right?
I am.
And so
Yes.
my big question is, are the kids all right? Do we have a bright future ahead of us? What are you seeing in the students that you're teaching?
Well, what I say, I even do a summer course in high school students, and they are so bright. See, they're with this new attitude, this new vision, and they are coming in knowing a lot and having studied a lot. So we really have advanced, I think, our understanding. There certainly still is a great interest in the topic, but they're bright. And I've taught different levels. Now I've taught high school. I certainly have college. I'm preparing right now. We start in another couple of weeks back in the fall.
At the end of Mastermind, you said there's always more work to do. There's no time to celebrate. We have to keep going. So what do you think lies ahead? Like, what can we be doing to keep this progress moving?
Well, this is where AI comes in. That's where we're headed. Is there some way we can get to the thinking of these offenders before they act? We've got to get to that level. And I do a group called Super Sleuth. And this past month, we had a detective on that's been looking for, I think, 17 years for some clue in the 17-year-old who just left work over a Labor Day weekend and was never seen afterward. So obviously she was picked up or she was hitchhiking, whatever. And they have absolutely nothing to go on. But they have all these interviews. He said, we have all these documents. I said, send them to us. We'll run it through AI. Maybe there is a clue there because they do what's called topic modeling. So they will pick up in the documents maybe something that hasn't been picked up before. So that's one of the examples that I think is a way to use AI to, be the detective, if you will, in the documents.
You have been innovating from the beginning of your career to this very moment. It's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. And, Jillian was the one, that really brought your story to our podcast. And I just want you to know, I don't want to speak for her, but like the way that she was screaming about you, and I'm so grateful that she brought your work to my knowledge, and our listeners are just absolutely obsessed with you, and it's a true honor to get to speak to you. Thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you.
I just want to say, Dr. Burgess, as a survivor, I just want to thank you so much for all of the work you've done and that you continue to do. You are a hero to me. It's unbelievable that we're sitting here doing this, and you inspire me, and I don't mean this to be weird, but I find so much comfort in you and what you've done, because even though there's so much more work to do, you have changed the game entirely. And just thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But the work goes on with other people. I just learned that there's even a group. We're studying Indigenous girls and women, and there's a group now that meets with the families of the still missing. So people are adding on to, I hope, some of our early work. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Thank you so much. Expert witness, The Weight of Our Testimony When Justice Hangs in the Balance. It's released September 2nd. Every one of our listeners is going to be getting it. Thank you again for taking the time, and best of luck with your book.
And Killer by Design was in our book club. Our book club,
yes.
We have a book club, and they did Killer.
Oh, great.
By Design.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Burgess.
you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Oh my God,
Can you
girl.
stand it?
I mean, Ann Burgess, absolutely. I know I said it 1,000 times, but her book, Expert Witness, comes out September 2nd. I've pre-ordered it. I hope everybody's going to go and read this. Jess, our researcher, read it and just was blown away by it.
Yeah, it's excellent. We were sent early copy. It's just like, buy it for everyone you know. Put it on your Christmas list to get for people during the holidays.
I can't believe that she's just like going to work every day. You know what I mean? She's like in her 80s and still just doing the damn thing.
Well, like she said, like it never stops.
And that's the thing. It never stops.
We need her.
We do.
I love her.
Dr. Ann, we love you so much.
We love you.
We'll have a link to her book in the show notes, and that's all. That's all we got for you today.
Yeah, hope you enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ann Burgess. We love you. All
right, bye.
Bye.